الفرض عن الجميع. هذا معناه.
So when we say communal obligation, what this means is that if all of the people of a town were to have abandoned these prayers in congregation, then they would be sinful. However, if some of them fulfill the congregational prayer, then that obligation would be fulfilled.
وفي الجمعة فرض عين عليهم، فرض عين على الذكور الأحرار البالغين المستوطنين غير المعذورين. أما الجمعة فهي فرض عين، يعني تجب على كل فرد من أفرادهم، وليس إن أقامها بعضهم سقط الواجب عن الباقين كما في فرض الكفاية.
And the author said that in the Friday prayer, the Jumu'ah, to pray in congregation is a personal obligation upon the free, pubescent, and unexcused male inhabitants. So from this it is understood that when it comes to the Friday prayer, it is a personal obligation upon these males that we just mentioned. And so if only some of them were to fulfill the Jumu'ah, it would not suffice for the rest of the males. Rather, it is a personal obligation upon every unexcused, free, pubescent, inhabiting male.
على من تكون فرض عين على الذكور فلا يدخل النساء لا تجب عليهم، وإن كان لو صلتها النساء أجزتهن الجمعة وكفتهن عن الظهر.
So who is obligated to pray the Jumu'ah prayer? Upon whom is praying the Jumu'ah prayer a personal obligation? We said the males, so what is excluded from this are the females. So they are not obligated. However, if they were to pray the Jumu'ah prayer, if the females, the women were to pray the Jumu'ah prayer, it would suffice. Meaning, they would have fulfilled, it would be valid and it would fulfill or suffice for the Zuhur in place of the Zuhur prayer.
للرجال الجمعة بدل الظهر، يصلون الجمعة ولا يصلون الظهر، وهي فرض عين عليهم. للنساء مثلا ليست فرضا عليهن، لكن إن فعلن كفتهن عن الظهر، بل ويندب لهن ذلك، وليس فقط يجوز بل مندوب.
Regarding the males, with the other conditions mentioned, it is a personal obligation upon them to pray the Jumu'ah Friday prayer, and it would suffice in place of the Dhuhr prayer. As for the woman, it is not an obligation upon them. However, it is permissible for them. Not only is it permissible, it is recommended for them to pray Jumu'ah. However, and it would also suffice in place of Dhuhr prayer.
الأحرار يعني فرض عين على الحر فقط، أما العبد ليس فرضا عليه، فإن تركها ما عصى، لكن إن فعلها أيضا كالمرأة تصح منه وتجزئه عن الظهر ويندب له أن يصليها.
And we also said among the criteria is those who are free. So we said those who are male and free. So it is not an obligation upon the slaves. It is not an obligation upon the slaves. Although if the slave were to pray the Jumu'ah prayer, it would be valid and it would suffice in place of the Dhuhr prayer. Rather, it is recommended for them to pray the Jumu'ah prayer.
وكذلك للبالغين هي فرض عين، للصبيان ليست كذلك، لكن أيضا كفتهم عن الظهر ويندب لهم ذلك كما ذكرنا فيما سبق.
And we said those who are pubescent, so male free pubescent, it is an obligation upon them, a personal obligation. So it is not, so the children who are below the age of puberty, it is not an obligation upon them. However, it is recommended for them, those children who have reached the age of mental discrimination and are not yet pubescent, it is valid for them to pray the Jumu'ah, and it would suffice in place of the Dhuhr, and it is recommended for them to pray Jumu'ah.
هو الصبي قبل البلوغ لا تجب عليه. فما معنى قولهم كفته عن الظهر؟ هو أصلا لا تجب عليه لا الجمعة ولا الظهر. معناه الأهل ليسوا مكلفين أن يقولوا له صلي الظهر إن صلى الجمعة.
So when we say that in regarding the child, as you know, the child who is below the age of puberty, he is not addressed with the obligations. He is not obligated to pray the Dhuhr prayer. So what does it mean when we say that if he prayed Jumu'ah, it would suffice in place of Dhuhr? Although he is not obligated to pray Dhuhr in the first place since he's not pubescent. What this means is that if this child were to have prayed the Jumu'ah prayer, then the guardian is not obligated to order the child to then pray the Dhuhr prayer in addition.
قال المستوطنين. المستوطنين معناه الذين نووا الإقامة في البلد بنية على التأبيد. الاستيطان نية الإقامة على التأبيد، يعني دائما يريد أن يقيم بهذا البلد دائما، يريد أن يجعل هذا البلد موطنا له. الموطن معناه يعيش فيه على التأبيد، على الدوام.
And we also said inhabitants, so it is a personal obligation upon the male, free, pubescent inhabitants. What is meant by the inhabitants? They are those who intend to reside in a town permanently. They intend to remain in that town permanently. They have taken this place, if you want, as an inhabitants, that is, they intend to remain there permanently.
ليس معناه أنه ليس له نية الخروج منه بالمرة، إنما ولو خرج نيته أن يعود. هذا معنى الوطن. ولو قد يسافر من وطنه سنة وسنتين وثلاث وعشرة، لكن بنية أن يعود يبقى ذلك المكان وطنه.
It does not mean when we say that he intends to remain there or to reside there permanently, so he is an inhabitant. This does not mean that he never leaves the town. Rather, if he were to leave the town, whether it was for a year or 2 years or even 10 years, he has the intention to always return back to this town.
فمن كان مسافرا للعمل للدراسة في غير وطنه، متى ما رجع لوطنه ولو أراد أن يقيم فيه يوما واحدا وكان يوم جمعة، يجب عليه وجوبا عينيا أن يصلي الجمعة.
Therefore, the one who works or studies in a place that is outside the town where he inhabits, and so even if that was for a prolonged period of time, and then he returns back to the place of his inhabitants that he inhabits, even if he returned back to this place for 1 day and it was the day of Friday, then he's obligated to perform the Jumu'ah prayer.
لا يكون حكمه كالمسافر الذي مر على بلد غير بلده بنية الإقامة يوم، ذاك لا يجب عليه. لكن لأن هذا البلد هو وطنه يجب عليه وليس له حكم المسافر فيه.
So his judgment would not be the judgment of the traveler who passes by a town that is not the town of his inhabitants, the town that he passes by that is not the town of his inhabitants. This traveler, he is not obligated to pray the Jumu'ah prayer if that day was the day of Friday. However, since this person, this town, in reference to this person, is the town that he inhabits, even if he were to return to this town for the duration of 1 day, he would not have the judgment of the traveler. Rather, he would be obligated to perform the Jumu'ah prayer if that day were to be the day of Friday.
أما إذا نوى الإقامة في بلد شهرا أكثر من 4 أيام، شهرا سنة، هذا يسمى مقيم لا يسمى مستوطن طالما لم ينوي الإقامة فيه على الدوام. فهذا إن كانت الجمعة موجودة في البلد بغيره هو لا يحسب من العدد الذين تجب فيهم الجمعة. إن كانت الجمعة موجودة بغيره تجب عليه بالتبع أن يحضر معهم.
However, if a person were to intend remaining in a town for a period of time for more than 4 days, for a month or longer, he intends to reside in a town for the duration that is more than 4 days, even if that were a month or longer, and he's not an inhabitant of this town, rather he intends to remain in this town for more than 4 days, then this person, if there was a Jumu'ah prayer that was already established through other than him, meaning he would not be counted amongst those by whom the Jumu'ah prayer is established, rather there was a Jumu'ah that was already established, then he would also be obligated to pray the Jumu'ah prayer in following the Jumu'ah prayer.
وكذا من نوى الإقامة عندهم 4 أيام فقط ليس أكثر من 4 أيام.
And for clarification, it's not a condition that he must intend to remain there for more than 4 days. Rather, if he were to intend remaining there for 4 days or more, then he would be considered a resident and he would no longer be considered a traveler.
هذا لا يحسب فيه لا يوم الدخول ولا يوم الخروج.
And when we say the 4 days, this does not include the day of entry or the day of exit.
يعني إن دخل البلد قبل المغرب يوم الاثنين مثلا.
So if he entered the town on Monday before Maghrib,
هذا اليوم يعتبر يوم دخول.
This day is considered the day of entry.
فيكون ونوى الإقامة الثلاثاء والأربعاء والخميس ونوى المغادرة يوم الجمعة قبل المغرب. فهذا يبقى حكمه حكم المسافر.
And then he remains in the town Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We said he entered on Monday before sunset. So this day is the day of entry. It's not counted as one of the days that he is in the town in regarding this matter. So then he remains Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. If he leaves before the sunset of Friday, so Friday would be the day of his exit, then he would have been in the town for 3 full days. So he is not considered a resident, rather he is considered a traveler.
والاعتبار بنيته عند الدخول عند دخول البلد كم يوم نوى أن يقيم. إذا عند الدخول نوى أن يقيم 4 أيام كوامل ولو غادر قبل ذلك ولو غادر بعد يومين غير رأيه حكمه حكم المقيم فيجب عليه أن يصلي الجمعة مع أهل الجمعة بالتبع.
And the intention that is given consideration here is what did he intend when he entered the town, the day of his entry. How long did he intend to remain in this town? If he intended to remain in this town for 4 full days, of course other than the day of entry and exit, then he would have the judgment of a resident. He would not be considered a traveler. So if the Jum'ah prayer was established in that town, he would be obligated to pray the Jum'ah prayer in addition as well. However, and even if this is the case, even if he ended up not staying 4 full days, but he did intend to stay there for 4 full days upon entry, but then later on he changed his mind, he would still have the judgment of the resident. And just be mindful that we are differentiating between the inhabitant and the resident according to the details that we have already explained, just to make sure that no one mixes those 2 things up.
فإن نوى الإقامة 4 أيام عند دخوله ليس له الترخص برخص المسافر يعني ومنها عدم وجوب الجمعة.
Therefore, if he intends to remain in that town upon entry, he remains to remain in that town for 4 full days, then he does not have the facilities that apply to the traveler. And amongst those facilities or those facilitators is that he's not obligated to attend Jumu'ah.
فإن نوى عند دخوله أن يقيم يومين فقط غير يوم الدخول والخروج ثم أثناء إقامته غير رأيه لأن يزيد إلى 4 أيام فأكثر أو تردد ما عاد جازما بالخروج قبل 4 أيام تردد قال يمكن أقيم أكثر أو أخرج قبل انقطع أيضا حكم السفر في حقه.
Now, also, if a person were to entered upon a town and intended to remain in that town for 2 days, then later on while he was there, his intention changed and he intended to stay for 4 or more days, 4 full days or more, or he became doubtful. He became hesitant. Will I remain here for these 2 days, or will I remain for 4 days or more? So by this, he would no longer be considered a traveler.
ولو رجع لنيته الأولى.
Even if later on he returns back to his original intention of remaining for 2 days.
واضح؟ يعني بعدما تردد قال يمكن أنا لا أنتهي من أعمالي، أو استضافه شخص فقال لعلي آتي إليك في أيام زيادة على يعني زيادة على 3 أيام، 4 فأكثر، ثم جزم أنه لن يبقى 4 أيام فأكثر. بتردده انقطع سفره، بنية الرجوع والخروج قبل الوقت لا يعود سفره.
So is this clear? We said if the person he came into a town with the intention of remaining there for 2 days, and while he was there he started to hesitate. Will I actually be here for 2 days or more because I have not yet finished the tasks or the different responsibilities or duties that I want to finish, or the work that I am doing has not been yet completed. So at this point he starts to hesitate or to doubt that he will stay 4 days or more, or he becomes certain. Even if he later on changes his intention to only stay for 2 days, by this hesitation he would no longer have the judgment of the traveler.
كما الذي دخل من الابتداء بنية الإقامة 4 أيام فأكثر ليس له حكم المسافر، ولو بعد دخول البلد غير رأيه فقال لا أطيل غدا أسافر.
Similar to the one who, if he enters the town with the intention of remaining there for 4 days or more, he would not be considered a traveler, even if he later decided that he will leave the following day and not remain there for 4 days or longer. He would still not be considered a traveler.
قال غير المعذورين. من هم المعذورون؟ الأعذار مثل المرض الذي يتعذر معه إتيان الجمعة، المرض الذي لا يستطيع بسببه أن يأتي الجمعة، هذا أحدها.
The author also said unexcused. So who are those who are addressed with the praying the Jumu'ah prayer? It's a personal obligation upon them to pray the Jumu'ah prayer. We said those who are male, pubescent, free, inhabiting, and unexcused. So if they are excused, an excused, they would not be obligated. An example of an excuse is an illness by which they would be prevented from attending the Jumu'ah prayer, a sickness that would disable them from attending the Jumu'ah prayer.
وكذلك من كان يستطيع الذهاب لكن بمشقة شديدة، يتعذر يعني لا يستطيع، أو يستطيع لكن بمشقة شديدة، كذلك من الأعذار.
So the one we spoke about, the one who is unable to actually go due to a sickness, and also the one who is excused is like the one who is able to go, but it would be a great hardship upon him to go.
أو تمريض القريب، أحد أقربائه مريض يريد أن يبقى معه ليعتني به لعلاجه، كذلك من أعذار ترك الجمعة.
Or if he is taking care of a relative who is sick, this is also an excuse that would be valid.
أو إشراف القريب والصاحب على الموت، قريبك أو صاحبك مشرف على الموت، يجوز لك أن تبقى معه وتترك الجمعة وتصلي الظهر. أو صاحبك.
Likewise, another excuse would be that if one's friend or one's relative was approaching death, so at this point you can remain with this friend or relative who is approaching death, and this would be an excuse by which one would not attend Jumu'ah.
ولو مع وجود ممرض، يعني أنت لا تبقى معه لتمريضه إنما لتؤنسه فقط.
Even in this case, even if there was someone there who is treating him, who is helping him, but you remain there because you want to keep him company, this is still an excuse, still a valid excuse.
وكذلك الخوف على النفس أو المال الذي يتركه في بيته مثلا من سارق ونحوه.
Likewise, fearing for oneself or fearing for money or assets that one has in his home. He fears that if he leaves his house, then someone will, to Jumu'ah, then someone will come and take that money or that wealth that he has at his home.
وكذلك المطر الشديد والطين الوحل، الطين الذي تغوص فيه الرجل عند المشي عليه. في بعض القرى يكون من بيته إلى المسجد للجمعة بسبب المطر الشديد، ولو بعد انقطاع المطر يصير طين تغوص فيه الرجل. هذا أيضا عذر من أعذار ترك الجمعة.
Likewise, amongst the excuses is if there is severe rain, and also if there is mud, that if one were to put his feet in this mud, they would go deep into the mud. This is considered also an excuse.
كل هؤلاء المعذورين معناه لهم عذر ألا يذهبوا، لكن إن تكلفوا وذهبوا وجبت عليهم، وإن وصلوا يعني إلى المكان تكلفا من غير وجوب عليهم صارت واجبة عليهم ويجب عليهم أداؤها. لا يقول أنا من الأعزاء من المعذورين إن وصل.
All of these people that we mentioned are excused from attending the Jumu'ah prayer. They would not be obligated to attend the Jumu'ah prayer. However, if they were to place the effort and to reach the place of Jumu'ah, although they are not obligated to do so, they place the effort to go to the place of Jumu'ah. If they arrive to the place of Jumu'ah, they would not say that I am from these people who are excused, so I don't pray the Jumu'ah prayer. If he reaches the place of Jumu'ah, he would be obligated to pray the Jumu'ah in this case, even if he was amongst those people who were originally excused.
يقول وتجب على من نوى الإقامة عندهم 4 أيام فأكثر. على أهل الجمعة هي لا تنعقد بالمقيمين، لا تصح فقط بالمقيمين، لكن إن كانت منعقدة تجب على أهل البلد وتجب على من كان مقيما عندهم 4 أيام فأكثر.
The author said it is also obligatory upon whoever intended to reside there for 4 days or more. So as we said, the Jumu'ah prayer is not established through the residents who are not inhabitants. Rather, if there was a Jumu'ah prayer that was already established, and it would be established through the inhabitants, not through the residents, and there are residents, meaning those who intend to remain in this town for 4 or more days, then these male residents are also obligated to attend the Jumu'ah prayer.
فلو أقام مقيمون فقط في قرية فارغة، كان أناس مسافرين وجدوا مكانا قرية فارغة من أهلها فأقاموا فيها 4 أيام أو أكثر، كانوا عددا كبيرا، لو كانوا مستوطنين لوجبت عليهم، لكن بما أنهم كلهم مقيمين لا تجب عليهم.
So if there are only residents in a town, not inhabitants, rather only residents in a town, they found a town that was empty. The inhabitants of that town, they left that town. So they came upon this town, these residents, and they intend to remain there for 4 or more days. They are residing in this town. And they are large enough in number that had they been inhabitants, they would have been obligated to perform the Jumu'ah prayer. However, since they are residents, they are not obligated to pray the Jumu'ah prayer. Rather, the Jumu'ah prayer would not be established through them. They would not pray the Jumu'ah prayer. Rather, they would pray the Zuhur prayer.
إذن الجمعة تنعقد بالمستوطنين وتجب على المقيمين بالتبع لا تنعقد بهم.
Therefore, the Jumu'ah prayer is obligatory upon the inhabitants, and it's established through the inhabitants. And as for the residents, it becomes an obligation upon them. The judgment would follow that they are also obligated to pray the Jumu'ah prayer, these residents, although it's not established through them.
قال إذا كانوا في مصر يعني ليس معناه دولة مصر، إنما البلد الكبير. المصر هو البلد الكبير، ودون ذلك أقل من المصر المدينة، ودون ذلك القرية.
So if they were in a Misr, maybe a large town, a city perhaps, one might say. I don't know if someone has a precise word for Misr. City. لعله city. If one was in a large town, which they refer to as a Misr, not Egypt. Misr here refers to a large town or a large city. They call this Misr, and below the Misr in size is what is called Medina, and below that is what is called Qaryah. The Qaryah, one might say, the village. So if you want for simplification, for the purpose of simplifying, the Misr is the city, and perhaps the Medina could be something like a large town, and the Qaryah is a village.
إذا كانوا في مصر أو ما يشبهه من القرى التي فيها الأسواق والمساجد فلا تجب على أهل الخيام. إذن على من تجب؟ على الذين يعيشون في مصر أو ما أشبهه من القرى، بشرط أن يكونوا يستطيعون أن يعيشوا بدون مستغنين عن غيرهم من خارجهم في هذه القرية.
So upon whom is it obligatory? So the author said if they were in a town or a Misr, a large city, or if they were in a village that is similar, meaning that has multiple markets and mosques, meaning a town, a village that is similar, that is, that they would be independent from outside resources, in their necessities, they are independent in what pertains to their necessities from outside resources. If there's villages of that type that have multiple marketplaces and mosques, then they are obligated to perform the Jumu'ah prayer.
يعني أهل القرى الذين هم مستوطنون في القرية ينظر هل يستطيعون السواء بأنفسهم، يعني المعيشة الدائمة من غير أن يحتاجوا غيرهم من خارجهم في ضرورياتهم، يعني فيها سوق، فيها مسجد، لا يحتاجون مثلا كل يوم أن يذهبوا إلى خارجها ليأتوا بالطعام، إنما يعيشون فيها فيما بينهم. إن كانوا هكذا يجب عليهم إقامة الجمعة فيها في هذه القرية.
So if there are inhabitants of a village, and we spoke about the three levels, the Misr and the Medina and the Qaryah. So if there's something of a village, a sort of a village, that they are able to have permanent livelihood in that village without needing to go outside that village. So they have a marketplace, they have a mosque. They do not need to go outside of this village in order to obtain their basic necessities. Rather, they are self-sufficient for their basic necessities within the confines of this village. Then they are obligated to establish the Jumu'ah prayer.
عندهم.
They would be obligated in this village to have the Jumu'ah prayer.
وإلا بعض القرى التي تكون صفتها أقل من هذا وكان بقربهم قرية فيها الجمعة بحيث يسمعون الأذان لو أذن بصوت مرتفع لوجب عليهم أن يقيموا أيضا الجمعة، لكن في ذلك البلد وليس عندهم. أما الصفة التي ذكرناها يجب عليهم أن يقيموا في قريتهم الجمعة.
However, if there is a village that is not of this level, rather they would need to exit the village, leave the village in order to obtain their basic necessities, then there was a town nearby a town nearby that had another Jumu'ah, that had a Jumu'ah established, and they were close enough to this village that they would be able to hear the sounds of the one who makes adhan with a loud voice, then they would be obligated to perform Jumu'ah, but not in their own village, rather in that neighboring village.
قال فلا تجب على أهل الخيام، أما الذين يعيشون في الخيام لا تجب عليهم ولو كانوا آلافا. لماذا؟ لأنهم قلنا إن الجمعة تجب على المستوطنين، وهؤلاء أهل الخيام لا استيطان لهم، عادتهم التنقل، وإن عاشوا في مكان سنة طالما هم في الخيام معناه يمكن في أي وقت أن يحملوا خيامهم وينتقلوا إلى مكان، ليس لهم نية الإقامة على التأبيد على الدوام، فشبهوا بركاب سفينة أو سفن، ولو كانوا كثرا وأقاموا فيها شهرا أو سنة لا تجب عليهم الجمعة، هم ليسوا مستوطنين فيها.
And as for the tent dwellers, they are not obligated to perform the Jumu'ah prayer. The Jumu'ah Friday prayer is not obligatory upon the tent dwellers, because even if they were thousands in numbers, because the tent dwellers are not inhabitants, rather their case is that they are always moving from one place to another. Even if they intend to remain in an area for 1 year, they have the intention of leaving that area, and so they are not considered inhabitants. Therefore the Jumu'ah would not be established through them, and they are not obligated to perform the Jumu'ah prayer. And they were likened, these tent dwellers, they were likened to those who ride a ship, those who are on a ship, so they would not be obligated to perform the Jumu'ah prayer.
أحيانا السفر في السفينة يأخذ شهرا، ولو كانوا عددا 40 فأكثر يعيشون في هذه السفينة كل هذا الشهر يمر عليهم جمعات لا تجب عليهم لأنهم ليسوا مستوطنين، وأهل الخيام كذلك مثلهم.
Because sometimes the one who's on the ship, those who are traveling via ship, they would travel sometimes for 1 month or longer. Even if they are 40 in number, a large number of people, they would not be obligated to perform the Jumu'ah prayer. And likewise the tent dwellers, even if they intend to remain in an area for an extended period of time, they have the intention of leaving this area, so they are not considered inhabitants.
كالذين يسكنون في الخيام.
One of the brothers is asking, he said in some areas there are people who live in boats. So the Shaykh said that their situation are like those who live in tents.
وتجب على من هو على 3 أميال فدون من بلدها. معناه من كان سكنه على 3 أميال فأقل. الميل كم؟ 1000 ذراع، والذراع كم؟ نحو 45 سنتيمتر. فمن كان من الجمعة على بعد 2000 ذراع، ميلين على 3 أميال يعني 6000 ذراع، لأن الميل 1000 ذراع، على بعد 6000 ذراع يجب عليه أن يذهب إليها ليصلي الجمعة مع أهلها.
The author, may Allah have mercy upon him, said, the Friday prayer is obligatory upon whomever lives within 3 Islamic miles of the town in which the Friday prayer is performed. And so 3 Islamic miles, if a person is from the town or lives within a distance of 3 Islamic miles from the town in which the Jumu'ah prayer is established, then he would also be obligated to attend the Jumu'ah prayer. And the Islamic mile, 1 Islamic mile, is 2,000 cubits. And the cubit is approximately 45 centimeters. So if someone is within the distance, I said 45? And the cubit is approximately 45 centimeters. So if the person is within a distance of 6,000 cubits, therefore, 3 Islamic miles times 2,000 is 6,000. If the person is within a distance of 6,000 cubits from the town of Jumu'ah, he lives a distance of 6,000 or less than 6,000 from the town of Jumu'ah, then he would be obligated to pray the Jumu'ah prayer as well.
فهذه القرى التي قلنا ليس فيها صفة من تجب عليهم الجمعة، إن كان يوجد قرية بقربهم فيها جمعة بهذه المسافة أو دون، يجب على رجالها كلهم أن يذهبوا إلى القرية التي فيها الجمعة ويصلوا فيها.
Even if one is in a village currently that does not have the descriptors by which that village would be obligated to establish a Jumu'ah prayer based on what we previously mentioned, if they are at a distance that we mentioned, 6,000 cubits or less from a village or a town where there is a Jumu'ah prayer established, then they are all obligated to attend that Jumu'ah prayer.
هذه المسافة لا تعني أن من كان في المدينة الكبيرة وبيته يبعد أكثر من 3 أميال أنها لا تجب عليه. هذا لمن كان خارج البلدة بهذه المسافة. أما من كان في البلدة ولو كان بيته يبعد عن مسجد الجمعة 10 أميال يجب عليه أن يقصدها ويصلي الجمعة.
However, this does not include the situation of the one who would be living in a very large town or city, and between his house and the place of Jumu'ah, and it is all within the city, is a distance that is more than 3 Islamic miles. It does not mean that this person is not obligated to attend the Jumu'ah prayer. Even if the distance was 10 miles, Islamic miles, this person would still be obligated to attend the Jumu'ah prayer.
هذه المسافة لمن هو يسكن خارج البلدة أو كان من سكان البلدة لكن كان خرج منها بقصد السفر مثلا، فإن نودي للجمعة قبل أن يبتعد هذه المسافة عليه أن يرجع.
So this distance of 3 Islamic miles or less, it pertains that this person is obligated to attend the Jumu'ah prayer in reference to the one who lives outside the town of Jumu'ah, and it also applies to the one who is an inhabitant of this town where the Jumu'ah is already established, but he left the town with the intention of traveling. However, before he reached this distance,
نودي للجمعة.
It was the call to prayer for Jumu'ah was called before he reached this distance of 3 Islamic miles. Then he's obligated to return back to the town and attend the Jumu'ah prayer.
نعم، أما إذا كان لما نودي للجمعة تعدى هذه المسافة لا يجب عليه الرجوع.
However, this inhabitant who left the town for travel, if he passed this distance of 3 Islamic miles and then the call to prayer for Jumu'ah was made, he's not obligated to return back to attend Jumu'ah.
واضح؟ يعني هذه المسافة ليس للذي يقيم في البلد، إنما للذي هو خارج عن البلد، إما يسكن خارجها أو هو من سكانها لكن خرج منها بقصد السفر.
So this should be clear. This distance does not apply to the residents who are within the perimeter of the town those who are residing in that town within its perimeters. Rather, it applies to the one who's outside this town of Jumu'ah, or, as we said, the one who is originally inhabitant of this town, but he left the town for travel and he reached that past, and he is at that distance.
نعم نعم. معناه أنه من كان من أهل البلد وكانت تجب عليه الجمعة لكن غادر قبل الزوال قبل دخول الظهر، إن ابتعد هذه المسافة عن طرف البلد قبل دخول الظهر وتعداها لا يجب عليه الرجوع وسقط الجمعة عنه، صار مسافرا. وليس شرطا أن يكون سافر قبل الفجر أو قبل الشروق على قول عندهم، يعني وإلا عندهم قول آخر أنه لا بد أن يكون غادر قبل الفجر حتى تسقط عنه الجمعة.
And so this person who is, the question that was asked for clarification, we mentioned it already, that the person who is from those who are obligated originally to attend the Jum'ah, he's from the inhabitants of this town, for example, or he's residing this town, he's from those who are obligated to attend Jum'ah. If he leaves the perimeter of this town and he passes this distance of 3 miles from the perimeter of the town, and then at that point the call for Jumu'ah prayer was made, he's not obligated to return back, rather to pray Jumu'ah, rather he's considered a traveler and he would not be obligated to perform the Jumu'ah prayer. However, and it's not a condition according to a saying that he leaves the town before Fajr, or else there is another saying within the school that one would be excused from the Jumu'ah prayer if he left the town before the Fajr, before Fajr.
لأنه قد يسمع النداء بالليل مع سكونه سكون الليل ونداوة الصوت يعني وقوة الصوت في مثل هذه المسافة. لما حددوا هذه المسافة؟ يقول لأنه في مثل هذه المسافة إن وقف أحد في طرف البلد ونادى، من كان في طرف البلد الثاني يسمع النداء. لأجل هذا هؤلاء يجب عليهم أن يحضروا الجمعة ولو لم يسمعوا بالفعل، يعني ليس كل مرة ينظرون إن سمعنا النداء نذهب وإن لم نسمع لا نذهب، إنما إن كانوا بهذه المسافة معناه هي هذه المسافة من حيث القرب، بحيث لو نودي للجمعة من طرفها مع نداوة الصوت وصفاء الجو لا يوجد أصوات معكرة، من كان في الطرف البلد الأخرى يسمع. هذا القرب هو الذي يوجب عليهم وليس السماع حقيقة السماع.
And they mentioned this distance because this distance is the distance that one would be able to hear at night in the stillness, while there is stillness, meaning there are no sounds that would cause disturbance. Rather, there is stillness and there is stillness. And if a person at the edge of the town were to make adhan with a projecting loud voice, then the one who's at the other edge of the town would be able to hear this adhan. So this is why they said that at this distance, this person would be obligated to attend the Jum'ah, because this is the distance at which one would be usually able to hear such a projected loud adhan. And it's not a condition that every time the person would have made adhan that he would be able to hear it. But as we said, considering the stillness of the weather and the like, and then this person would be obligated to attend Jumu'ah.
ولم يحد مالك حدا في أقل من تقام بهم الجمعة من أهل المدن، وإنما حد بعضهم 30 فأكثر. يعني سيدنا الإمام مالك رضي الله عنه هو نفسه لم يذكر ما هو العدد الأقل في القرية التي تجب فيها الجمعة إن كانوا فيها هذا العدد، إنما قال من يمكنهم السواء، من يمكنهم العيش بانفرادهم في هذه القرية كما ذكرنا من غير أن يضطروا في حاجاتهم الضرورية من خارجهم، هؤلاء تجب عليهم. بعض أهل المذهب قالوا هذا العدد تقديره بنحو 30.
The author said that
ثلاثين فأكثر.
Imam Malik did not specify a minimum number of individuals from the land required for the Jumu'ah prayer to be established. Rather, some scholars specified at least 30. So, it is not narrated from Imam Malik a specific minimum number of inhabitants that need to be present. However, some of them mentioned that it needs to be a number, as we discussed previously, that they are able to live independently in this village for their basic necessities, independent from outside resources. They are self-sufficient. This is the number of people that need to attend. This is the minimum. And some of them estimated and said this is at least 30 individuals or more.
وقال بعضهم تجوز بثلاثة سوى الإمام. ليس معنى هذا أنه إن كان في القرية فقط 3 سوى الإمام تجب عليهم، ليس هذا المراد. إنما أهل القرية إن كانوا نحو 30 فأكثر ممن يمكنهم السواء كما ذكرنا، وجب عليهم أن يقيموا الجمعة. فإن وجبت عليهم لا يشترط حضور الجميع لتصح بهم، فلو حضر منهم 3 فأكثر صحت بهم، بعدما تكون وجبت عليهم بكونهم عددا أكبر من هذا 30 فأكثر. واضح؟
So some scholars said it is permissible with 3 excluding the imam. This does not mean that it would be obligatory upon them if there were only 3 excluding the imam in the village. Rather, if they were in the village or the town and there was the number that we discussed, there were 30 or more people who are able to live independently from outside resources, as we described previously. And if there are this number in this town, 30 or more, and only 3 of them were present for the Jumu'ah, excluding the Imam, then this prayer would be valid. Their Jumu'ah would be valid.
ما قال تجب عليهم إن كانوا 3 سوى الإمام، قال تجوز ب3 سوى الإمام. لأن 3 سوى الإمام لا يتصور أن يمكنهم السواء في القرية بأنفسهم فقط. فمعناه إن كانت تجب على أهل هذه القرية، يجب على كل رجالها أن يحضروا، ذكورها البالغين. فإن لم يحضر منهم إلا 3 سوى الإمام تصح بهم وتجوز بهم. أما إن لم يحضر إلا 1 إلا 2 مع الإمام لا تصح، لا يصلون الجمعة. هم حضروا ولم يحضر غيرهم، سقط الفرض عنهم.
So those 30, as we said, if they are present in the town, those 30 who are able to live independently from outside resources in this town, these 30 are all obligated to attend the Jumu'ah prayer, as we mentioned previously. However, if only 3 of these 30, there's 30 or more, only 3 of them, excluding the Imam, attended. There was 3 followers and there's the Imam. They were 3 in number, excluding the Imam. Then the Jumu'ah prayer for this group, who are 3 and the Imam, would be valid and it would be permissible.
لما قالوا 3؟ قالوا، وهذا قول الإمام أبي حنيفة أيضا، أنها تجوز ب3 سوى الإمام، لأنهم قالوا الجمعة تنعقد بجمع وأقل الجمع 3.
Why did they say 3 excluding the Imam? And this is the saying of Abu Hanifa as well, because the Jumu'ah prayer is established as a congregational prayer, and the minimum as a congregational prayer that has a jami', and the minimum jami' plural is of people, يعني is 3.
لأجل هذا إن حضر مع الإمام 3 إذن يرى أنه حضر معه جمع يقيم بهم الجمعة.
So if there are 3 who attended with the imam, then this would be considered a jami', these 3, and so he would pray the Jumu'ah prayer.
وبعض المالكية يقول لا تصلى بالثلاثة فقط إلا ب12 على الأقل غير الإمام.
And some of the Maliki said no, if there are 3 and there's the imam, it would not be prayed with them. Rather, there needs to be 12 excluding the imam at least.
مما أخذ هذا الرقم أيضا مما ورد في الحديث الشريف أن سيدنا محمد عليه الصلاة والسلام، وهذه القصة موجودة في سورة الجمعة التي يقال لها أيضا سورة المنافقين، كان يخطب الجمعة في المدينة المنورة، فجاءت قافلة طعام من خارج المدينة، فالناس انفضوا وذهبوا ينظروا في هذه القافلة لأنه كان زمن قحط وجوع. ما بقي مع الرسول في الجمعة إلا 12، والرسول أتم بهم لم يقطع لأن البقية انفضوا. فلأجل هذا قالوا أقل ما تقام به هو ما حصل مع النبي، هذا قالوا مشاهد معلوم، فلأجل هذا قالوا 12 إن حضر للإمام يقيم بهم، إن لم يحضر 12 على الأقل لا يقيم بهم، وهم كلهم الذين لم يحضروا عصوا.
And where was this number 12 taken from? It was taken from an honorable hadith in which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was giving the Friday sermon, the Friday speech. And while he was giving the Friday speech, a caravan of food appeared. And so the people started to go to this caravan where there was food, because it was a time of drought and a time of famine. So they started to approach this caravan, and remained with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam were 12 other people. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not cut off the Jumu'ah, rather he continued with them. They were 12 in number with him sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the Prophet and 12 other people. So the prayer in this case is, that's why some of them said, if there are 12 excluding the Imam, then they pray the Jumu'ah prayer. And if it is less than 12, then they would not pray the Jumu'ah prayer. And those who did not attend, who were obligated to attend, are sinful.
وسبحان الله والحمد لله رب العالمين والله سبحانه وتعالى أعلم. نهلل ونصلي على النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام.